Maternity and Childbirth. Our object in the foregoing chapters has been to point out the unity of origin and treatment of some of the more common diseases. We are indeed fully aware that those who are the constant victims of disease, and who are constantly oppressed by the fear of death, will still continue to put themselves at the mercy of doctors in spite of all that we might say against it. We venture to think, however, that there would be at least a few who are willing to cure themselves of their diseases by purely natural processes, so as to save themselves from all further attacks, and such persons would surely find it worthwhile to follow the simple directions we have given. Before concluding this book, we will also give a few hints on maternity and the care of the child, as well as some common accidents. In the lower orders of the animal creation, the pangs of childbirth are altogether unknown. The same should really be the case with perfectly healthy women. In fact, most women in the country regard childbirth as quite an ordinary matter. They continue to do their normal work till almost the last moment, and experience hardly any pain at the time of delivery. Women employed in labor have also been known to be able very often to return to work almost immediately after childbirth. How comes it, then, that women in towns and cities have to endure so much pain and suffering at the time of childbirth? And why is it that they have to receive special treatment before and after the delivery? The answer is simple and obvious. The women in towns have to lead an unnatural life. Their food, their costume, their mode of life in general offend against the natural laws of healthy living. Further, besides becoming pregnant at a premature age, they are the sad victims of men's lust even after pregnancy, as well as immediately after childbirth, so that conception again takes place at too short an interval. This is the state of the utter misery and wretchedness in which lakhs of our young girls and women find themselves in our country today. To my mind, life under such conditions is little removed from the tortures of hell. So long as men continue to behave so monstrously, there can be no hope of happiness for our women. Many men put the blame on the women's shoulders, but it is none of our business here to weigh the relative guilt of man and woman in this matter. We are only concerned to recognize the existence of the evil and to point out its cure. Let all married people realize, once for all, that so long as sexual enjoyment at a premature age, as well as during pregnancy and soon after childbirth, does not cease to exist in our land, an easy and painless childbirth must remain a wild dream. Women silently endure the pangs of childbirth, as well as the subsequent period of confinement, under the wrong notion that they are inevitable, but they fail to see how their own ignorance and weakness of will make their children grow weaker and droop from day to day. It is the clear duty of every man and woman to try to avert this calamity at any cost. If even a single man and woman should do their duty in this matter, to that extent it would mean the elevation of the world. And this is clearly a matter in which no man need or should wait for another's example. It follows, then, that the very first duty of the husband is wholly to abstain from all sexual intercourse with the wife from the moment of conception. And great is the responsibility that rests on the wife during the 9 months that follow. She should be made to realize that the character of the child to be born will depend entirely on her life and conduct during this sacred period. If she fills her mind with love for all things that are good and noble, the child will also manifest the same disposition. If, on the other hand, she gives way to anger and other evil passions, her child will necessarily inherit the same. Hence, in these 9 months she should engage herself constantly in good works, free her mind from all fear and worry, give no room for any evil thoughts or feelings, keep out all untruth from her life, and waste not a moment in idle talk or deed. The child that is born of such a mother, how can it help being noble and strong? The pregnant woman should, of course, keep her body as pure as her mind. She should breathe plenty of fresh air, and eat only so much of plain and wholesome food as she can easily digest. If she attends to all the directions already given in the matter of diet, etc., she would have no need at all to seek the aid of doctors. If she suffers from constipation, the proportion of olive oil in the diet should be increased, and in cases of nausea or vomiting, she should take a juice of a lime in water without sugar. All spices and condiments should be scrupulously avoided. The yearning for various new things that attends a woman in pregnancy may be restrained by the use of kuna baths. This is also useful in increasing her strength and vitality and in easing the pains of childbirth. It is also necessary to steel her mind against such yearnings by nipping in the bud each desire as it comes. The parents should be constantly mindful of the welfare of the child in the womb. It is also the husband's duty during this period to refrain from all wranglings with his wife, and to conduct himself in such a way as to make her cheerful and happy. She should be relieved of the heavier duties of household management, and made to walk for some time every day in fresh air. And on no account should she be given any drugs or medicines during the period. Care of the child. We do not propose in this chapter to describe the duties of a midwife or wet nurse, but only to point out how the child should be cared for after birth. Those who have read the foregoing chapters need not be told how injurious it is to keep the mother, during the period of confinement, in a dark and ill-ventilated closet, and to make her lie on a dirty bed with a fire underneath. These practices, however time-honored they may be, are nevertheless fraught with dangerous consequences. No doubt, during the cold season the mother should be kept warm, but this is best done by using good blankets. If the apartment is too cold and a fire has to be kept, it must be lighted outside and only brought in when all the smoke has disappeared, and even then it should not be kept under the cot in which she lies. Warmth may also be given by keeping bottles of hot water on the bed. All the clothes and sheets should be thoroughly cleansed after childbirth and before being used again. As the health of the child will depend entirely on that of the mother, special attention must be paid to her diet and mode of living. If she is fed on wheat, with plenty of good fruits like the plantain, and olive oil, she would feel warm and strong and have plenty of milk. Olive oil gives aperient properties to the mother's milk, and thus serves to keep the child free from constipation. If the child is unwell, attention must be turned to the state of the mother's health. Administering drugs to the child is as good as murdering it, for the child, with its delicate constitution, easily succumbs to their poisonous effects. Hence, the medicine should be administered to the mother, so that its beneficial properties may be transmitted to the child through her milk. If the child suffers, as it often does, from cough or loose bowels, there is no cause for alarm. We should wait for a day or so and try to get at the root of the trouble, and then remove it. Making fuss over it and falling into a panic only makes matters worse. The child should invariably be bathed in tepid water. Its clothing should be as little as possible. For a few months it is best to have none at all. The child should be laid on a thin, soft white sheet and covered with a warm cloth. This will obviate the need for the use of shirts, prevent the clothes from getting dirty, and make the child hardy and strong. A fine piece of cloth folded into 4 should be placed over the navel string and kept in position by a band over it. The practice of tying a thread to the navel string and hanging it round the neck is highly injurious. The navel band should be kept loose. If the part round the navel be moist, fine, well-sifted flour may be gently applied over it. As long as the supply of the mother's milk is sufficient, the child should be fed exclusively on it, but when it gets insufficient, fried wheat well powdered and mixed with hot water and a little of jaggery may be used as a substitute with quite good results. Half a plantain well mashed and mixed with half a spoonful of olive oil is also particularly beneficial. If cow's milk has to be given, it should at first be mixed with water in the proportion of 3 to 1, and then heated until it just begins to boil, when a little of pure jaggery should also be added. The use of sugar instead of jaggery is harmful. The child should gradually be accustomed to a fruit diet so that its blood may be kept pure from the very beginning, and it may grow manly and bright. Those mothers who begin to feed their children on things like rice, vegetables, and dal, as soon as or even before its teeth have appeared, are doing them infinite harm. Needless to say, coffee and tea should be strictly eschewed. When the child is grown big enough to walk, it may be clothed with kurta and the like, but its feet should still be kept bare, so that it may be free to roam about at will. The use of shoes prevents the free circulation of blood and the development of hardy feet and legs. Dressing the child in silk or lace cloths with cap and coat and ornaments is a barbarous practice. Our attempt to enhance by such ridiculous means the beauty that nature has given only bespeaks our vanity and ignorance. We should always remember that the education of the child really begins from its very birth, and is best given by the parents themselves. The use of threats and punishments and the practice of gorging the children with food are an outrage on the principles of true education. As the old saying has it, like parent, like child. Hence, The example and practice of the parents necessarily shape the conduct and character of the children. If they are weaklings, their children also grow up weak and delicate. If they talk clearly and distinctly, so too will the children. But if they talk with a lisp, the children will also learn to do so. If they use foul language or are addicted to bad habits, the children necessarily imitate them and develop into bad characters. In fact, there is no field of human activity in which the child does not imitate the example of its parents. We see, then, how heavy is the responsibility that rests on the shoulders of the parents. The very first duty of a man is to give such education to his children as will make them honest and truthful, and an ornament to the society in which they live. In the animal and vegetable kingdoms, the offspring invariably takes after the parent. Man alone has violated this law of nature. It is only among men that we see such incongruities as vicious children being born to virtuous parents, or sickly ones to the healthy. This is due to the fact that we thoughtlessly become parents when we are not mature enough to assume the responsibilities of that position. It is the solemn duty of all virtuous parents to train their children in noble ways. This requires that both the father and the mother should themselves have received a sound education. Where the parents lack such education and are aware of their imperfections, it is their duty to entrust their children to the care of proper guardians. It is foolish to expect that a high character can be developed in the children by merely sending them to school. Where the training given at school is inconsistent with that given at home, there can be no hope of improvement for the child. As already pointed out, the true education of the child begins from the very moment of its birth. The rudiments of knowledge are imbibed almost in the course of play. This indeed was the ancient tradition. The practice of sending children to school is a growth of yesterday. If only the parents would do their duty by their children, there would be no limit to the possibilities of their advancement. But, in fact, we make playthings of our children. We deck their persons with fine clothes and jewels. We gorge them with sweetmeats and spoil them from their very infancy by fondlings and caresses. We let them go unchecked on their way in our false affection for them. Being ourselves miserly, sensuous, dishonest, slothful, and uncleanly, is it to be wondered at that our children should follow in our footsteps and turn out weak and vicious, selfish and slothful, sensuous and immoral? Let all thoughtful parents ponder well over these matters, for on them depends the future of our land.